Okay, folks, so this is for week 4 of JS1. Thank you for joining. What I'm going to do is, as with previous weeks, start with a definition or start by defining the problem that we want to examine in this workshop. So if we just head over to prep for this week, prep interface. Prep interface talks about something called ordinal numbers. What are ordinal numbers? So let's just break this down for a moment so we can get a better understanding of what ordinal numbers are, and that will help us when we start to make sense of this problem. So the one useful way to think of ordinal numbers is to think about levels of a building. So if you're in a building, you start off on ground floor, then you will move up to first floor, and then second floor, and so on. So these numbers here, so forget ground floor, but starting from here, we have first, second, third. These numbers are ordinal numbers. So they're numbers that tell us something about the position that we are in terms of where we are on this building. Okay, so an alternative way of writing this, instead of saying the word first, would be to write number 1, ST, and then take the ND of the end here, and let's call this 2, second, and call this third, like that. So we have the first floor, second floor, and third floor. Okay, so these are our ordinal numbers. So you think of this as being like an abbreviated form. Could continue doing that in that pattern, and I would have the 4th floor, and then the 5th floor, and so on and so forth. And I could keep adding on floors, and I would have the 7th floor, 8th floor, and so on and so forth. And so these numbers are the ordinal numbers here. Okay, so what we're going to look at today is a function called get ordinal number. And if we were to call get ordinal number with the number 1, then it's going to tell us what this ordinal number would be here. So in other words, target output for this function would be the string 1 st first. If we continued that pattern, if I called get ordinal number again with number 2, target output is going to be 2 nd, like so. Okay, so let's try another example with number 5. Tajuddin, are you there? Can you hear me? What do you think the target output would be in this case?
5th.
5th. It's going to be 5th. Cool. Let's do one more. And if I did get ordinal number with 10, target output, Adnia, can you hear me?
Yeah,
What
the target will be 10th.
10th, and so on and so forth for each of those. So the get ordinal number function will take as an argument one integer or one whole number, and its return value will be the ordinal number for that particular number, if you like. Are there any questions about that before we move along?
No.
No?
No.
Cool. Awesome. So what we're going to do is start off with a recap of something we looked at last time, which was this business of writing assertions. So let's take an assertion, for example, for this statement here. We want to check that our function returns the correct output given some kind of input. So can anyone who's been thinking about this remind us the syntax that we can use to create an assertion for get ordinal number? So Aisha, can you just remind us what that looks like?
Console.assert.
Cool.
Yeah,
and then what do I put in here?
The function, inside you put the function name, get ordinal number.
and the input, which is 1, and then should equal to, so 3 equals sign, first.
Cool.
Yeah.
And what variable names could you use to store these values, these expressions here?
Come
What
again?
names? What names could you give to these expressions if you were to
Oh,
store them in
yeah.
variables?
So the first one is constant. No, the first one is current. Sorry,
No problem. So what's the target output going to be
current.
defined as?
Current. Sorry. Can someone answer? I'll be backing up.
No problem. Current output. What's current output going to be?
The current output will be 1.
Current output is going to be not just 1, but the current output is going to be the
Get
output.
ordinal number
Exactly, with 1.
1.
It's going to be the result we get back from calling
Yeah.
get ordinal number with 1. Okay, cool. So we can put that here. And this first level
Will
is going
be
to
the target output.
exactly, it's going to be our target output. So we want to check that when our function is called, that its return value is going to be the same as our target that we have in mind here. Awesome. So let's get rid of this. And in addition to that, Tajudeen, can you remind us what else can we put into the console.assert here to get more information back?
Okay, we can put a comma. Then we in a string we put target output %s to return that, and then we put current output %s.
Cool. And then
target output and current output.
cool. So these values, target output, will get substituted into here. Current output will get substituted into here. And what we will get is an assertion. And then we can run ordinal.js with node. And at the moment, we get back this reference error, which is telling us that get ordinal number is not defined. And that's because of what reason? What have I not done here at the moment?
We haven't created the function.
We haven't defined the function get ordinal number. Precisely. So I clear the terminal and run ordinal.js with node again. I now get this feedback telling me assertion failed, target output is first, and the current output is undefined. And just to recap one final time, this is something that I always get people to go back to. How do we make sense of this current output undefined? Why are we getting current output undefined printed to the terminal this way? Any suggestions?
Can I answer?
Go for it, Aisha.
Is it because the function inside the function parameters we have nothing? We didn't declare any variable.
Exactly. Not because we've not declared any variables. Sorry, I'm just going to turn the light on. I'm going to just put that onto another line.
Okay.
So what do you think? What is missing from the function that means that we get undefined at the moment?
Oh, it's the statement, the instructions.
Yeah, we are not returning anything.
We're not returning anything. So if the functions, excuse me, one moment. If there is nothing within the curly braces and there's no return statement, then our function will return undefined. And that's how we know that at the moment. Cool. So before we move on any further, folks, can you just try and summarize in your own words? Does somebody want to summarize why we are doing these assertions? Why have we gone to all this trouble to talk about assertions? Does anybody want to talk about this? Why? Because this is an important part of the course. Put my hand up for some reason. Anybody want to talk about this? Why are we spending time going through assertions like this? Aisha, do you have your hand raised?
Yeah. Is it to check whether our code is working?
Exactly. So it's going to be this one massive use, which is that we are using it to check that our function is working. Now, at the moment, the functions are small in that they are doing like one small thing. But being able to check that our functions work and they behave in the way we expect is a massive, massive advantage that we have over just writing functions and writing code without really checking to see what's properly going on. There's another reason as well why this is very important to us as well. Can anybody else think why we can breaking down assertions like this? Any ideas?
Can I answer?
Go for it, Adnia.
Yeah, if there's something wrong with our function, so this is how we can this assertion can point out why are we getting this error.
Yes, so if something is going wrong, we get feedback about why it's going wrong. So the feedback should indicate how this problem has occurred. So what is going wrong with our function that means it's not living up to our expectations. The other reason why this is important as well is from a problem solving point of view, because these functions will behave differently depending on their inputs. If we can break the functions down into smaller units of work or into smaller assertions, then we can break the problem down, which is what we're going to do in this case. So to begin with, we're going to think about writing this assertion for get ordinal number. And we're just going to be thinking about this case where we have one st like so. However, now that we've seen how to do it with assertions like this is the week 3 coursework where you'll have to build assertions using console.assert. In reality, we're not going to write assertions like this. So this writing the assertion this way will start to build your understanding of how you can check your code. Now we're going to start to use other code written by other people to write tests in a slightly different way. What we will see is when we do this is that we will start to build up tests or assertions that will give us better feedback than what we're getting at the moment, as you will see when we start to write this out. So what we're going to do is we're going to start a new project, okay, from scratch in here. So I just want you to just take stock of where we are at the moment. So we are currently in week 4 example. Can somebody remind me, how do I check my current directory in the terminal? Tajuddin, can you remember how to do this? How do I check my current directory in here? Can you hear me, Tajuddin? Are you there?
PWD.
PWD, what does that stand for?
Print working directory.
So if I absolutely correct, bang on. PWD means print working directory, and that tells me I'm currently in this week 4 example. I've got a file called ordinal.js. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this assertion about get ordinal number, and we're going to start to rewrite it using what we call a test framework. That means that we're going to use code written by other developers and that we're going to use it in our project to help us make tests. Okay, so I'm going to refer back to the prep notes in here because this tells us the steps that we need to take. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create something called package.json. Package.json, for the time being, all you need to know about this is that it gives us useful information about our current project. So to create this file in this directory, I'm just going to run the following command: touch package.json. There are other ways of doing this, but I'm just going to show you how to do this from scratch, just so you build up a sense of how you can, or why, I should say, why you would use this file. So let's just run that command. When I run touchpackage.json, if I run ls now, you should see that I've got two files. I've got the one I started with, ordinal.js, and created this empty package.json file. So touch, and then the file name will just create that file blank, empty for me to begin with, which it creates it there. What goes in this file? So this file will contain useful information about the current project that we're working on. So I can add information into the package.json that looks like this. Name for the name of the project, and a description informing somebody who is using this project what this project is all about. Okay, so I'm just going to take that and paste it into here. Notice that got these curly braces and the syntax, which is specific to the package.json. This is in a specific file format called JSON. I'm not going to talk more about the JSON format for the time being, but this is just the way the file will look at the beginning. So we'll have this name and this description. And we can call this week 4 prep workshop as well. We'll change the name of that project. Okay. Awesome. So what next from here? The next part of the prep talks about packages. So now that we've established that we're working with this function get ordinal number and we're writing assertions, what we're going to do is install a package. And installing a package means we're going to take code that's written on another database somewhere, and we're going to fetch that and download it to our project so that it's available for us to use when we're working locally. Can somebody explain briefly why this is so important? Why is it so important that we can download code from another place and use it in our project like this? Why do we even want to do that? Any suggestions? Why do we want to download code that lives somewhere else? Any thoughts on that? Why might we want to do that?
Let me make a try.
Go for it, Tajuddin.
Yeah, well, one good reason could be that we don't want to reinvent the wheel because somebody has already done it. Why not just adapt it and then use it in our own situation? And then another reason could be that it's if everybody is using it, anybody else that wants to read or review our code will also have a good understanding of what we are doing, that it is maybe like in line with the standards that everybody is doing.
Cool. Two really cool reasons to start off with. Absolutely. First of all, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. Someone else has written some really good software that we can reuse in our application. Why not use it? Other reason is that it might lead to better standards if more people understand the application or the package that we're using within our current project. Awesome. And there are other advantages we'll see as we move through. So where exactly does this come from? So in the prep, we talk about something called Node Package Manager, or NPM. Let's just check that out on here on NPM docs. What does it tell us? Take us to NPM. NPM home. Cool. So this is the home place, if you like. This is the place where we can browse and search for packages that we can use within our project. Okay. And for example, I can search for a package that we're going to be using today called Jest. So let's search for Jest in here, in NPM. And then we get in some information about this package. So NPM is an online registry or a database of lots of different packages that we can use in our project. And one of them that we're going to use This is one called Jest. Cool. And once we've navigated to Jest on NPM, you can also look at documentation for Jest on here as well, on Jest's own dedicated website. Okay, awesome. Before we go any further, anybody have any questions about this? Awesome. So stop me, by the way, if anything is unclear at the moment. So going back to the prep then for a moment, prep talks about this stage where we're going to install Jest in our project. So we've got some instructions here, npm install jest --save--dev, which we're going to break down in a moment. But I just want to refer you to the documentation as well for Jest. If I click up on docs up here, browser, we'll also see this command appear in the getting started section. So a lot of these common packages that you see, if you go to the documentation, you will often find instructions for installation and how you can get started with this project. In the notes for the prep, we've taken this command and we've broken it down for you so we can see all the different parts. So let's just take this command apart because it's important that we understand what it does. So npm is a command that we use in the terminal, and it's the command that we use from npm to install packages. Install means download the package to our machine. Jest is the name of the package that we're downloading. And --save--dev, we'll come back to what this means in a moment, but essentially this additional part of the command means that this is needed for development, but it's not needed in production. It might not make sense what that means just yet, but we'll break that down a bit more in a moment. However, overall, think of it like this. Please go to the npm database, find the Jest package and install it on my local machine. That's the way you can really interpret this command. So in my terminal, I'm going to take that command, Jest --save --dev, and run it like so. And let's see what happens. So get this progress bar coming up because we're installing, downloading packages onto my computer. Because I'm running Zoom as well at the same time, it's going to be slightly slower. But I want you to just take notice of what happens when this completes. Awesome. So let's see what happens. It says added 290 packages and audited 291 packages in 23 seconds. Found 0 vulnerabilities. Main thing to take away is what has changed here. So what has been added into the directory after running that command? After running that command, we get something called node modules. Anybody want to guess what they think this is? What do we think this is? Node modules. You may not have seen this before. Any suggestions? Somebody, Agnia, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Any suggestions? What do you think that this could be? Node modules.
This might contain some files of code that we are using our code to test them.
Yes, exactly. In fact, all that code that we needed for Jest that we've downloaded into our computer is going to be stored for us in here. So any packages that we install, the code is going to live within this directory. So we don't really need to go in here. Okay. We also have a package-lock. I'm not going to talk about what's going on in here, but I'll leave you to think about or figure out what's happening inside package-lock.json. But I just want to draw your attention to the fact that we now have a node modules directory, and we now have a package lock.json inside of our directory. Awesome. Cool. And if I run ls one more time, I can just prove that by listing the files and directories within the present directory. Awesome. So where do we head to next? So
Can I have a question?
absolutely.
So for each file, do we have to install this package in each working directory?
That's a very, very good question. So most of the time when you have a new repository add near, you will tend to have one package.json per repository
Oh,
a lot of the time. And then you can install all of your dependencies in here. And then then this will just get updated with all the dependencies that you need.
all
But
right.
it will depend on some repositories. Some repositories might have multiple package.jsons. So it just depends on what the setup of your project is. Okay.
All right.
Cool. Any other questions? Awesome. So with that in mind, in the notes, it talks about something called API again. So this term comes up so many times in the course that it's worth delving into it one more time. That the idea of an application programming interface, API for short. Okay, this term comes up all the time. And in fact, if you go to the documentation for Jest, it even says API up here in the top of this bar. So application programming interface, you've already been using application programming interfaces from the very beginning of the course. This is a difficult question, but let's try together to think about what we mean by application programming interface. So I guess let's start off with the idea of interface. So when I use the word interface, what does that mean to you? So Sariat, are you there? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello? Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, sorry.
can
Okay,
hear
I
you.
couldn't hear you then for a moment.
Yeah.
Sariat, what do you think we mean by the word interface?
Oh, I can't really remember the meaning right now.
Can't really remember. Okay, that's no worries. Any other takers? Aisha, are you there? Can you hear? Can you think about what we mean by the word interface?
Is it like a computer, how two computers connect to each other? I'm not really sure.
Not sure. It's okay. But it's
Yeah.
okay. But probably worth just spending. Let's see if I can like bring up a new share a second. Just bear with me for one moment. New share. Can you see Sketchbook? I'm going to attempt to do a drawing in here, folks. And if it's really bad, then we'll just abandon this. So that was really bad. Okay, so here is, if you like, a barrier. And over here we have programmer. I'm just going to do this very slowly so it's clear. Programmer. And here we have an application. So this could be a complex application that I have that I'm working with. So we have application and we have programmer. Application might be something like Jest. Okay. Can you think? So you're all programmers. I'm a programmer. So this is a programmer here. It's a very crude drawing, and we have an application on the right, and in the middle we have this thing which we refer to as an interface. This is the interface here. Anybody say now, given this diagram, can anybody think a bit more about why we need the interface here? Because Jest is probably hundreds of thousands of lines of code. I don't know. It's probably thousands of lines of code for Jest. It's this complicated application. We're programmers over here, and we want to use the Jest application. In order to make use of Jest, we have between us this layer or this interface. So thinking about it in those terms, why is the interface important if we have the programmer and we have the application over here? Any thoughts on that? This is very complicated. This could be thousands of lines of code.
Is it how the programmer reaches or gets the application? Like,
I think it's interpret our command and communicate with the application.
So both of your answers are heading in the right direction here. Yeah, we're communicating with the application via this interface. In other words, we're making use of functionality in the interface.
is it the tool we use? No?
Yes, so there will be tools or functions that we can use within an interface. And why would we use the interface in the first place? Why do we need to use functions that are part of the interface like this? For example, here's another example here. Console.assert is an interface. It's a function, but it also is really part of an interface. Part of the reason is that I don't know how console.assert is implemented. Okay, I don't know how console.assert is implemented. So why is it critical that we as programmers can communicate like this with the interface? And we don't see what's over here. We don't see what's on this other side. Do we even care about what's on this other side over here? This side, by the way, is like the implementation of Jest. Do we care about this bit over here?
No, we only need the code which we need, not all the code, not all of them. So
right, exactly. Keep going with that. We only need the code that we need, right? So we only need the code we need from Jest. We don't need to know about how it's implemented or how it works under the hood. All we need to know is Jest's API. Okay, this interface, which is basically going to be a bunch of functions that we can use in our project. Okay, and we can use documentation to look this up. In fact, we go back to API is actually not particularly ironically not helpful in this particular case, but the docs are helpful here. In the documentation of Jest, we see this syntax here. We see a function called test with a string, and then we see this syntax inside of here. And these functions that we're looking at here, these are part of Jest. And what I want you to think about is that we don't need to understand how test is implemented. We don't need to know how expect is implemented. We just need to know what they will do for us. This syntax that we're going to use here is how we build a test in our code using the Jest framework. So this is really the kind of the starting point that we need to use this application. Does anybody have any questions about that before we continue? Awesome. Right. So let's head back to here. And if you do think of questions, just stop me. So here, what we have, way of checking our, what we have here is our old way of checking our code. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to do the new way, checking code using Jest. And what I'm going to do for you is break down the syntax that we can use in Jest so that we can write test and an assertion to check that our code is doing this thing up here. So in Jest, we do the following. We're going to use this function called test. We're going to call it, and it's going to take two arguments, two inputs. So it's going to take string. It's also going to take this weird argument that we've not seen before, which is a function itself. So this is an arrow function. Don't need you to worry about it too much at this point. All you need to really understand is that this function that's part of Jest has a string and a function. First part is this string is going to be a description of what we are testing for. What is it that we are testing for with our function? So in the notes, I've already written a description of this. So we're going to use this description here. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, we're going to check that we can convert 1 to an ordinal number. Like so. So this is a description of the functionality. And then inside of the curly braces, here, we're going to write an assertion. The assertion being that thing that's either true or false. So before, we wrote an assertion like this, using console.assert. Now using Jest, we use this syntax here, using this function called expect. So, whoops, we have expect, which we call, and then to be, we call it like this. So this is the syntax for a Jest assertion. And this expect to be syntax is going to check to see if the two values are the same. So we're going to have a value in here and a value in here. So in this particular case, we're going to use current output that we had before. We call get ordinal number of 1. We're going to have target output that we had before, which was first. We can just put those values straight into here. What we've written here, folks, is a test using the Jest framework. And we have our current output as before when we call the function, the target output that we're hoping for, and we have an assertion that checks or that says really we expect the current output to be the same as the target output. Okay. So I'm actually now going to remove this one. I'm actually just going to comment it out for the time being because we don't need that. Awesome. So, folks, did somebody remind me, please? How did we run this file before when we were using Node? How did we do that? Tajuddin, are you there? Can you hear me? How did I run this file with Node before?
You write node, And then you write the name of the JS file, yes, ordinal.js.
Awesome. So we wrote an ordinal node ordinal.js, and then we run it this time like so. So we get this weird error here, error passing package.json, unexpected token, because of the comments in here. Sorry, ignore that. Let's run it one more time. We get reference error, test is not defined. We get test is not defined. So in order for this file to run, for this to work, we need to run this file slightly differently now, because it's no longer going to work just to do node ordinal.js, because test is not defined in here. So what we need to do is we need to find a new way to execute this file using something called a script. And in the notes talks about this, that we get this test is not defined. And the solution to this is by adding a scripts section to our package.json. So in here in our package.json, you can do that over here. Scripts. I'm going to call it a test script in Jest. What this means, script, is now we can say, we can use the npm command again, and then we can reference anything that we've put inside of scripts. So I could put here npm test. What this means is that npm will look for the script inside the package.json, and it will see Jest, and then it will get Jest to run this file, or will run this application using Jest, and it will make this test function available. Really, all you need to understand at this point is that you can write scripts like this, and then we can use this script to execute Jest for this application. Any questions about that? Sorry, Aisha, go for it.
Okay, so when you copied the line about the script, you pasted it in the middle of the two lines. Is it a must to do that, or we can paste it like under anywhere?
I think it can go anywhere, but generally you're going to see scripts come before the dependencies like this.
Okay.
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 Awesome. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, sorry.
Any other questions?
Yeah, can you please re-explain before Aisha's question? Your explanation then. I wasn't
Just
really...
about ordinal.js. So I will absolutely one more time. So if I go back to node ordinal.js here, when I try to run that file with node, get a reference error. And it says test is not defined. So what we need to do is we need to run the application or run this file using Jest. And when we do that, Jest will make this function available to us. To do that, we need a script in here that says when you run a test, I'm going to use Jest to run your code for you. And if we don't do it like that, then we won't be able to use the API for Jest. So it's a bit of a kind of mysterious step at the moment, but you can think of this as saying, if I want to run tests, I have to use Jest in here. Okay, for the time being. So let's just see what we do. So the command that we want to do is npm test now. The npm test will look up Jest in here. So I run npm test, and it refers to Jest here. It says no tests found at the moment. Reason for this is that Jest will look for tests in particular files. So instead of saying ordinal.js, what I need to have now is ordinal.js. test.js, like so. Okay. Jest will go through the application and look for files or file names in a particular format. And if it doesn't see .test.js here, it will just ignore it, which is why it says here at the moment, no tests found. I'm going to clear one more time, then I'm going to run npm test. So instead of running node, then the file name every time, now I'm going to run npm test every time I want to run the tests for Jest. Let's run this one more time then. Awesome. When that runs again, now I get the following feedback. And this is the first time you are seeing feedback from Jest. Hopefully, you're going to start to see straight away why Jest is going to be a massive improvement from what we saw before. So let's break down this feedback that we're getting back from Jest. First off, it's saying fail. So if a test has failed, it's telling us what file or what test file it executed. It's telling us the name of the test or the test description, which came from here. So it's printed out this string, converts one to an ordinal number. And it's given us some more information. So is it setting expected first and it's received undefined. So it expected first and it received undefined. So this is what it expected, target output. But the current output, what it received, this value is undefined. And Jest is even smart enough to tell us the line number where that error came from and where that assertion failed. It's coming from line 27 on here. Awesome. So this is all the work we were doing. We've found a package called Jest. We've installed it. We've set up our project. And now we can write tests using Jest in here. Awesome. Now, does anybody want me to explore any of this one more time, or anybody have any questions about that?
So our JS file, like if there are multiple functions in a file, so if we want to only test one or two functions, so we create this type of like ordinal.test.js each time if we just want to test them.
If you just want to test specific files, you mean?
Like a function, like specific function within a file.
Specific function in a file. Okay, I see what you mean. I'm not going to cover that here, Adney, but there is definitely a way of doing that. But I'll cover that outside the scope of this workshop for the time being. But yeah, you definitely can do that.
All right.
Awesome. So I'm going to delete this because I don't want to litter the code with comments. So let's make this pass now. So I've got one expected first and I received undefined. So this is similar feedback to before. So what can I do in here now is what could I do in here? What can I do in here, folks, to make this test pass?
Give the instructions on what the function should do.
So what should the function do so far?
So when the function is run, it should return the number that is given within the parameter, and then, oh, sorry. So because they are different, I think we'll need if or else conditions.
We will need if and else conditions. You're absolutely right. But don't worry about the if or else conditions just yet. Just focus on the first test first of all.
Oh,
to
okay.
Get this working.
So we'll say it should return the number that is given, and then like in a string, literal template, return literal template, and then the number, and then at the end, st.
Let's run the test again. And then we get a pass. It's actually far more satisfying when you pass tests using Jest because you get green feedback and then you get a tick. So this is what we get at the moment. We're taking the number that we pass in, which is 1, and then we're just adding st to it, like so. So this is what I was talking about before. With tests, we have the opportunity to break down the functionality into smaller components and test those as we build it up. And that will help you to break the problem down. So any questions about that, folks?
Yeah, sorry. My question is now we have a file named ordinal test.js. I don't mean we have multiple files of JS. Are we going to use the same package.json for everything, or we have to repeat and we have to create another one for each JS?
No. So in this particular case, if we wanted to test multiple things in here, we could just create more files, more test files, and we can still use the same package.json.
Okay.
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 Awesome. But that's an excellent question. Cool. Should we look at one more test situation in here related to what's in the prep in here? So in the prep, talks about going further with tests, and it talks about this particular case here where it says numbers ending in 1 have an ordinal number ending in st generally. So we have this pattern here which I want you to focus on, which is that we start off with first, we have 21st, 31st, 41st, etc., except for 11, which ends in th. So all the numbers ending in 1 will continue to end in st, but 11 has a slightly different case because it ends in th. So what we're going to do is write a test that looks like this. So instead of converts 1 to an ordinal number, we can add another test in and say it works for any number ending in 1. And what's slightly different now, what I'm going to do that's slightly different is instead of just having one assertion in here, I'm going to write multiple assertions. You can have multiple assertions. So I can write get ordinal number 1 here. We can check that that's going to be a first. We can do it again. Get ordinal number with 11. What did we say that 11 is going to be? What's the target output this time, folks?
11th.
11th th. So that's odd one out.
Mhm.
And expect get ordinal number with 31, for example, to be, what's the target output in this case?
31st.
31st. So we have a test like that. So what you should note is that in Jest, we can write one test like this, but we can have multiple assertions or multiple checks for that function within this block here. So we could even remove this test because we're doing that already in here. Cool. Now then, finally, before you leave, what do you think will happen when we run this test? What are your thoughts on this about thinking ahead? Bearing in mind what the function's current behavior is, how it currently returns num st, do you think it's going to happen in these other cases?
Yeah, for the first one, it will print out, but for the second one, which is 11th, it will give an error, says the return value is not with the th.
Exactly.
I think it will give an error there. And the third one, it will print it out. So I think the error will occur for the second value.
Can I
Cool.
also try?
Yeah, go for it, Aisha. Yeah.
It will fail and say 11 expected to be 11th instead of 11 ST,
Cool.
something like that.
Awesome. Yeah, you're both right, definitely. That's an excellent. Because at the moment it's just taking norm and it's adding ST to it, we just get, it's going to work for this one in this particular case. But when we hit this assertion, we're going to hit a problem. And notice the feedback that we get from Jest here. Very clever again. It's past this assertion, but it's saying that on line 18 here, it tried to do this assertion. It tried to check the get ordinal number with 11 to be 11th, and it's failed. Why has it failed? Because it expected to get 11th back. So this is expected was our target output. But what we received back from the function was 11 with ST on the end. And that's what the test is telling us at the moment. So before we go any further, before we end, how might we fix this logic within the function before we continue? Anybody want to suggest?
Yeah, I
go
think by using the conditional statement.
So what could I say, Sariat?
That is if just
If what? Go ahead. Yeah, you're absolutely on the right lines.
if num is equals to is equal to 1 or so. If
Talk through what your logic is.
Or I'm just guessing. I'm not really certain. I'm sorry. I'm just guessing.
Talk about to help you think about this
If
one.
num is equals to 1 or num is equals to 11. It should.
What do you think is going to happen in these cases? You're on the right tracks, but to help you think about this problem, let me just add in another assertion here, right? One more to help you think about this problem.
Okay. Let me try again.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, if num is equals to, can we just go back to the if statement?
Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, close out. If num is equals to 11, it should return num with the TH at the back of the curly bracket.
Yeah.
Else it should return num with ST.
Why did you say that, by the way? Why did you change that? Talk me through that.
Because here we already tested for num with one. We said with
yeah,
sorry,
it's okay.
I'm muddling this up.
You're on the right track. No, go for it. Keep going. Take your time.
In the test, we said that it should test for any number that ends with 1. But for 11, we know that 11 is not 11 with ST. We are testing for TH. We should test for TH. So in the conditional statement, I think we have to make it clear we have to make it clear that it should test for 11 and then return the num with TH. And if it is if it is not 11, that it should return ST. I'm not sure if I'm really cool. Right with the explanation.
Can I also try with explanation?
You're absolutely right, by the way. Yeah, Aisha, do you want to explain in other terms as well? You're absolutely right, Sariat. Go ahead, Aisha.
Yeah, so we gave it like that. Sariat gave it like that because 11 is the only one that will end with TH, while the rest, which will end with 1, will all take the ST, will end with ST. That's why we did it like that.
Absolutely, exactly. So TH in this particular case is an exceptional case. It's the only one that acts in that way because it ends in th, whereas all the others are st. That's fantastic. That's very well done. So notice how I didn't put else here. I'm seeing a lot of people in coursework putting else like this. This is a classic thing that people are doing this sort of, but actually I've not actually works just by doing this. So that's something else for you to think about in your code when you're doing this. Why does it work for me to just write return like this and return at the end? Something for you to think about. But we have not finished implementing this function. There's still much more to go, but to think about that further, you would need to continue adding in tests to check for other cases, like, for example, what happens when the number ends in 2, and then you would have to add more logic into this function to handle that case. Okay. Any final questions before we end it there, folks?
Can I ask?
Yes, go for it.
So
Can you hear me?
yeah, does the test like help us to develop our coding? Like first we can write tests, and then using tests, it can guide us to write our code, our function.
Yes, exactly. Because eventually what's going to happen is the functions that you implement will become more complicated. As the functions become more complicated, it will be sometimes more difficult to see how you break it down. Tests are a very useful way of like breaking down the logic and guiding you into how you can solve the problem, if you like. And also the test will give you feedback about how it's breaking, what's going wrong. Okay. And you can still find, and so you'll get really useful feedback about whether the code is working or not. So that's super useful as well. That's an excellent question. Awesome. Any other questions?
No.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Trying to draw you back. I don't understand Aisha's question.
The question, sorry, what was your question again, Aisha?
I was just asking if tests like also help us develop our function. So like, let's say you're supposed to make a function about something. So if you write the test first, it will give you like an idea what you should do to write the function. Okay.
Okay.
Like
okay.
step by step. So at the beginning, I want my function to test this. So you're gonna go and make the function, and then I also wanted to do this. So you're writing test and then going back to the function and develop it more.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Awesome. So thank you very much, folks.
I have one more question, Mitch, before you go.
Go for it. Go for it, Aisha.
So we downloaded the Jest package. So this means every time we have like an assignment and we need to test, we have to download it inside the directory we're working on.
That won't necessarily always be the case, but when you have a new repository with a new project, they will tell you which directory you should install it in.
Okay.
So, but most of the time, like if you're starting off a new application, it will often be in the root of the application. So when you clone down a repository, a lot of the time you'll be installing Jest at the top level of that repository.
Okay.
But the instructions should make it clear where to install it, which directory.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. No problem. Awesome. Thank you very much, folks.
Please, Mitch, before you go, I want to quickly ask this question. If after working with, after downloading the node, and then we finish our work, or like we need to push it, are we not going to be pushing the directory, the node directory also? Are we going
That's
to be pushing it?
that's an excellent question. So when you are working, let me just move this out. In a new project, you will often have within this directory a file that looks like this called .gitignore. And inside of this file, you can specify anything that you do not want to commit to your repository, because you do not want to commit Jest, because it's thousands and thousands of files. So you would have something in there that looks like this. Most of the time, you will have this already set up in your projects, but sometimes you'll need to add this manually. So you just need to check in your version control, source control tab that you're not committing loads of things. And if so, it's probably because you need a git ignore. Excellent question.
Thank you.
No problem. Awesome. Shall we leave it there then, folks? Thank you very much for joining today. You had some fantastic questions. I will put this
Thank you as
record.
well.
No problem at all. I will
Thanks for having us.
Of
Fine.
course,
It was
of
really
course.
helpful.
Thank you, no problem at all. I will put this up as a recording as soon as possible for your colleagues so that people can use this as well.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.